My name's Lyle Hoovler. I'm chairman of French Creek Cog. You all silenced your phone. Here's the rules, and this is a panel discussion only, so there's not going to be anything voted on tonight or nothing like that, but you can at least get some ideas of what's going on. The first thing, it's for the emergency ambulance service, and I'd like to introduce the panel members. We have Brad Rowe, Eric Henry, and Doug Dick, and Dave Bansek, is that it? Basnak.
Slow.
Sorry. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. So first thing on the is each member of the panel is going to get to speak for 7 minutes. Give you some ideas of what they're going to be talking about. And then after everyone's done talking, we're going to have a question and answer period. So hopefully this will all take place in a short amount of time, but maybe not. You know, you have to be home before midnight, we might be in trouble, I don't know. Anyway, so now I'm going to turn it over to Brad. We'll have Brad speak first, and then go right down the line.
Hey, can we interrupt? This is
Yes.
the speakers also.
Oh.
And how about go with Karen?
Okay. And you are?
Paul Pascuzzi. I'm from Warren County.
Okay, Paul Paskowski from Warren County. So we'll start with Eric, and we'll go from there.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. I guess part of the reason why you're here is because of me. I had wrote you some very tough emails and has had a lot of tough meetings, and I feel your pain. You know, I have been doing budgets my entire life. I've owned the ambulance service for 18 years, so when I do budgets, I understand the process that you're handling when it comes to budgets. And I want to just share a few things with you about some of the stuff I've heard to this point. I will tell you that we've had EMS meetings for 10 plus years. These folks have been there. We've had legislators there. We've had county commissioners there. We've had other municipalities that have come. But this is probably the largest crowd that we've seen ever when it comes to EMS and legislative folks when it comes to responsibility for EMS and how to pay for it. At the end of the day, I just want to share a few things. We talk about the discussion points of what I've heard so far from some municipalities to get you an idea of where I have came from. Obviously, the ambulance service has done this and provided the service to the 911 service coverage area for no cost for 18 years. But unfortunately, because of insurance and issues like that, it's got to the point now where it's difficult to make our ends meet. And so, just like all other businesses, we have to make some tough decisions. We can either try and find more revenue, or we can cut our services. Cutting our services would be less ambulances and less people available, and those are both options. So I will tell you guys that at the end of the day, for me, if the actual EMS fee, and I'm going to stay away from the word tax, but if the actual EMS fee for coverage is something you don't want to do, that's okay. If you don't want to do it, I'm fine with that. But me as a business, I'm going to have to provide less coverage. I mean, and so I can do that. I can still provide coverage to your township like we have for the last 18 years. I'm just going to have to make other cuts in my business to make sure we can sustain what we're doing. These folks next to me will talk about some different things, but I want to talk about some of the things that I've heard from just our first introductory meetings we've had. And I've met most of you, or I have had meetings with most of you, or we're scheduling meetings with most of you. The folks that are out west, I did not scheduling meetings with you, and it's just the central part of scheduled meetings, but I'm certainly willing to go to more meetings if need be. So here's some of the things that we've heard in our discussions. You know, make your employees all part-time. Don't hire full-timers. Cut all of your benefits for your employees. We need to find more volunteers. Those in fire service will find that interesting because we would love to find more volunteers. There are just not many volunteers. Someone told me that we will start your own service, and I'll put this on camera today. Anybody who wants to start an ambulance service, I have 7 ambulances. I'll give you the pick of the litter. Fully stocked, you can have it tomorrow. Let me know which one it is, and I'll give it to you. Because I truly mean that. In all seriousness, if you want to start your own service, I encourage you to do that. Because at the end of the day, you'll find out that EMS is a struggle. But I'm okay with that. There's been services that have said that, and I'm okay with that. Someone has said to me, ask the insurance companies for more reimbursements. Well, we've been doing that for 15 years. And these guys will talk about the payer mixes and what's good or what's bad. Some people ask me if I got a PPP loan and where it went. It's pretty simple. It's payroll protection. That's where it went. We paid our payroll. We are very thankful for the payroll protection loan. That's where it's at. Some townships said we're not responsible for EMS. I think that the law is fairly clear about how you provide EMS, but I'm not a lawyer. Mr. Shadinger's here today. He can talk to you about that. But in my eyes, it's probably more of a municipal responsibility. Our fire department already provides EMS. I'm okay with that. We have great volunteer fire departments in Crawford County. They're great QRSs, but they don't transport the patient. And that's the difference between an ambulance and a QRS. Some people said I should live within my means. I'm actually the funny part is, I'm the lowest paid paramedic in Meadville Ambulance Service. My paramedics have all been paid a lot of money to do a lot of overtime, and thank God they're doing it. I've got one guy who literally works 80 hours a week because that's all we have, and I appreciate that. At the end of the day, I'm a businessman, and a lot of this advice came from people who've never owned a business before. If you've owned a business before, you understand that you're obviously what you bring in has to somewhere come close to your expendables. I bought the ambulance service in 2003 with a partner. I bought that partner out in 2006. Since that time until present day, I've invested $1.7 million into our ambulance service. And that's not hard when you think about it, because ambulances are $150,000, stretchers are $40,000, and cardiac monitors are $50,000. We have 6 of those. We have 6 total sets, just like I just said. So it's not hard to multiply that and figure out that we've invested a lot of money. Our ambulances are in good shape. We try to keep good quality equipment to use. And so for me, that's the issue is people are upset because we asked for assistance to provide EMS coverage. I'm okay if you don't want to provide it. I'm okay if you don't want to pay for it. But at the end of the day, I'm a private business who, if I do nothing and I continue the same path I'm here today, I will be there. I'm at 5:30, I see. So I got my timer on. It's good. So at the end of the day, that's where I'll be. And so I'll leave you with this, and I'll pass it on to whoever's next. But I will tell you that I'm working on the county budget right now. It's a $70 million budget as a commissioner, and I understand that there's cuts to be made. There's a lot of cuts to be made. We don't want to do a tax increase. I feel for all of you here. So I'll leave you with this. If you don't want to do that increase, if you can't do it because of a budget, let me know. I'll still provide you coverage in your township. That's a deal I'll make with you. It'll just be less coverage because I'm going to have to make cuts like everybody else does. Thank you.
Oh, okay, yeah, she's going to. Hi, is this on? Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Brad Roy. Welcome to the East Mead Fire Department. I live here in East Mead Township, so I'm glad the meeting's here. I was an EMT here for 18 years. We're QRS only out here, so we appreciate the ambulance services that we work with. As a firefighter here for 23 years, I've been inactive for the last year. That's a big problem we have. All the departments have guys like me that have kind of faded off and they're not involved anymore. I should get back involved again. I hope to do that. My grandfather was a charter member here. My dad was a member here. He's a fire chief for a year or two. And then I'm 3rd generation here. So I need to get back into it, just like all those other thousands and thousands of EMTs who have let their certifications lapse. There's just a huge, huge shortage of EMTs. There's a huge shortage of volunteer firefighters. There's just not enough people. Now, as far as what we're doing at the state level, I'm sure this will get talked about later on, but there is that $0.50, it's $0.50, right, for property tax you can charge for EMS. I think fire is $2 Now, we could raise that at the state level and give you the option of being able to go higher if that doesn't raise enough money that you need. There's the legislation that would allow counties to set up authorities to help run the EMS system, because sometimes you might have a little borough of 200 people. It's kind of hard to manage an EMS system. But county-wide, some people like that idea, some people don't like that idea. It might be more manageable to do it at the county level. We did this year increase the medical assistance reimbursement as part of the budget process this year. It's not as much as some of us wanted to do. There's a lot of competing interest in Harrisburg. Some legislators wanted to increase school funding more. Some wanted to increase funding for DEP more. Some for all these different things. And I pushed hard for EMS, but we didn't get as much of an increase as should have happened. And then previously, when was that, Eric? 3 or 4 years ago? 5 years ago? It was 4 years ago, we increased the rate that medical assistance pays. But Eric, in the last 20 years, how many times has it gone up? Like probably those 2 times. And the problem around here, we have a lot of people that are on medical assistance. So any ambulance service, they lose money on calls when the customer is on medical assistance. They lose money when the patient has Medicare. They make money when the patient has Highmark or UPMC or something like that. So it is a situation where just depends on the types of calls that they're on and where they're at. You know, they have to make sure they have enough money coming in, and they don't. Not just Meadville, but if you look locally, even volunteer departments, Franklin Township shut down, you know, Cambridge shut down, Cochranton shut down, Jamestown might have shut down. Did Jamestown shut down, Michelle? Yeah, Jamestown. I mean, a lot of departments are, so it's not a scare tactic that EMS is fragile. It's very fragile. And that's all I'm going to say for now, because I want to leave a lot of time for questions, because I know everybody out there has a lot of questions. Thank you.
I'm struggling with a little bit of laryngitis, so I apologize, but I'm here to listen. Most certainly, as Brad said, I think on the state level, we're trying to do some unique things, and I do have Nate Silcox, who is the Executive Director of the Emergency Management and Veterans Affairs Committee in the Senate. He's on the phone, and I don't know, Nate, can you say hello?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Senator.
And Nate, how many years have you been Executive Director of that committee?
Since 2015.
Since 2015. So he has a lot of history with this committee. Senator Robbins, he was worked with Senator Bob Robbins, and we are trying to look at different things in the committee to help our emergency management and our volunteer firefighters. And we have done several things on the state level. And, you know, I had a piece of that legislation. I do think that with the firefighters and different things like that, you know, the tax credits, local tax incentives, and I'm with Brad. You know, I know that our volunteers are dwindling, and trying to make it easier to be a volunteer, make it easier to be part of emergency management, as well as the fire departments. And, you know, one of those things that we did is, you know, that a driver doesn't have to have certain certifications. That was an emergency waiver, and we are continuing that. One of the other things that was a piece of my legislation with emergency or the fire departments, that is that the state-owned and state-related colleges in each region would have to offer some of these courses so that people don't have to take a day off or 2 days or 3 days, use your vacation to travel across the state to get certified. And I think we can do some of the things on the regulatory process as well. And I know Nate's committed, I know our committee's committed to doing that, as well as some of the things like with the lift assist, direct pay, different things like that that we can also try to help on the state level. So with that, before my voice completely goes, I'm here to listen, and we're here to help. And I just want to thank each and every one of you for what you do, and we look forward to being a partner with you. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dave Basnak. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat this evening. I'm the President and Executive Director of EmergiCare in Erie, Pennsylvania. We cover 7 counties, including in the Crawford County area, the Titusville area, and several municipalities around there. And so I think one thing that Eric sort of hit on, but everybody pretty much on this side of the table down, we've all been raised in EMS. That's where we all started. I started actually from Michelle's neck of the woods in Jamestown, Pennsylvania, back when Jamestown had their BLS ambulance service. That's where I got my start, and I've grown up and pretty much done this my entire life. So we all still work hard. We all still go out and work on the car to make sure our community is taken care of. So tonight what I wanted to speak about was specifically the payer mix. So you'll hear us talking about insurances, and as Brad and Eric alluded to, you know, Medicare, Medicaid, the increase and stuff like that. So when I look at what our payer mix looks like in the Crawford County area specifically, we see that Medicare is about 50%, Medicaid's 16%, and then up to complete up to 90% is no pay and self-pay. And so think about the most vulnerable individuals in our community and what type of insurance do they have. Typically, those are the individuals that are on Medicaid, Medicare, and so that's when we see our services and what our billing mix is. Most of the time we are billing some form of government entity, whether it be Medicaid or Medicare, for that service. The problem is that Medicaid right now as it sits today, the increase we expect to go in January 1, so we're still not seeing those additional dollars yet, but right now Medicaid only covers about the 40% of what it costs to provide service at the time of service. So when somebody calls 911 and we go out, take care of them, transport them to the hospital, it only covers about 40% of that expense. Medicare pays a little bit better, and it only covers about 65% of the expense of providing the service. And so when you loop that in with the self-pay and no pay, if somebody is ranked as self-pay, that's probably for a reason that they don't have insurance, correct? I mean, they don't have the income to be able to have insurance. So that puts them into that vulnerable, column. So 70% of 90% of the payer mix that we see, essentially the payer mix does not cover the cost of the service that's provided. Now that's just one expense in all of this. Really the other category of expense that we have to look at as being 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, is what we call the cost of readiness. In other words, having that ambulance sit there ready to go at a moment's notice. And not to mention, emergencies don't schedule themselves typically. Sometimes 2, 3, 4. In fact, Doug and I were just talking earlier today, his service over the weekend had 5 simultaneous emergencies at one time, That's not uncommon. And so, but to have those resources ready, there's an expense to that, to have that crew sitting there. And that's really, when we look at municipal dollars, that's what we're trying to offset the expense of, and some of the service that we're providing is to be able to have those assets ready, well-qualified individuals ready to go at a moment's notice. So the other struggle that goes along with funding is recruitment and retention. And so if none of you have ever ridden along with an ambulance crew before, familiar with the scope of work, you have to think about what these individuals, what EMS providers work with on a daily basis. It's not like what you see on TV. The conditions are extremely challenging. The system is extremely busy. If you've never carried somebody who is 400 pounds out of the 3rd floor of a residence before, you don't know what that's like at 3 o'clock in the morning. And the fact that they might not be breathing and they might require resuscitation. There's a lot that we expect of EMS providers. So the problem is when you look at the wage tier of what the average EMS provider makes, they make less than the people that are working at Country Fair, Sheetz, Walmart, because we can't just raise our prices. When we get the inflationary pressures that we see today, we can't just raise our prices and expect that additional income. Think about when you go to Walmart and you're paying more for a gallon of milk, you're paying more for a loaf of bread. What do they do in order to cover those costs to be able to pay their workforce better? They raise the price of things, right? You don't want the gallon of milk, you're not willing to pay for it, you don't get it. Unfortunately, we're not in that scenario. Somebody calls 911, we have to respond. By law, if we're available, 911 is called, we have to respond. And so when you hear us talk about payer mix and we talk about insurances, most of the insurances that we're billing for the most vulnerable citizens, because that's who we're taking care of, most of that insurance is not covering the cost of just providing the service, let alone the cost of readiness.
Thank you. My name is Doug Dick. I am the Chief of Superior Ambulance Service in Grove City, Pennsylvania, Mercer County. We serve 22 municipalities in parts of Mercer, Butler, and Venango County. Kind of give you an idea, I've been in public safety for 46 years, and anybody in this room that is still in public safety, thank you very much for your service. I've been in fire and EMS and leadership capacities. I've worked for the federal government, state government, private industry, volunteer. I've kind of been around the horn. So I guess EMS is my passion. And so I'm also part of Marion Township, Butler County municipal government. So I understand exactly what you guys and ladies are faced with here in this room with budgets and trying to figure out how you're going to buy things and pay for things. As Dave said, some of our things that we saw increase, a box of nitrile gloves went up 300%. And we have no way to recoup that money. So on every ambulance call, if there are 2 crew members on any ambulance call, that's 4 gloves. Multiply that 3 times, that's 12 gloves per call. And you can just keep on figuring this out of how many boxes of 100 gloves you're gonna go through. We've been pretty blessed that we have gotten the support we've gotten, but I will tell you that under the municipal codes, and again, none of us up here wrote these, but the municipal codes state that the municipalities are responsible for helping to ensure fire and EMS service, and that includes financial support. Nobody wants to hear that. In the law as it's written, it's a $500,000 property tax that you can enact at any meeting to support your local ambulance service. And it is actually 3 mills for fire departments. And the state is looking, and we've had some of these meetings with our state legislators, looking to up the EMS to 1.5 mils. Also, the LST funds, your local service tax. In law, it states that 25% of that LST funds must be used for emergency services. That includes law enforcement, fire, and EMS. Now, those are the 2 options you have today versus thinking outside the box of anything else you want to do, whether it be a per capita fee or taking funds from the general budget to do this. But I want to tell everybody, today, the News Herald talks about Clarion County crisis. Shippenville Ambulance just announced that they are shutting their doors, and they've been talking about the same thing in Clarion County like everybody else is talking about. We've been talking about this in Mercer County, Butler County, Venango County, now Crawford County, and it's all across the Commonwealth. This is not something unique to your area. It's across the Commonwealth. But this is going to be problematic for Clarion County. And the gentleman to the left here from Warren County will tell you how things are in Warren. So this is real, folks. And the only thing I have to say to end this is, how much do you value your loved one's life? What is it worth? Because a $500,000 property tax on property is not a lot of money compared to not having an ambulance and waiting for an hour to get there. And if it's a cardiac arrest or if it's a trauma call, I don't think I need to explain to everybody the outcomes of those calls. So I want you to think about those things. I know these are tough decisions, tough times for everybody, and I think all the EMS agencies, not only here in Crawford County, but across the Commonwealth, are asking for is a little bit of support, a little bit of help. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. Hi, good evening. My name is Paul Pascuzzi, and I'm sorry I wasn't here right on time. The traffic on 77 was from Warren County, kind of, anyway. I'm a member of the Clarendon Borough Council. I'm serving my 10th term as a Borough Council member. I'm also a member of the Clarendon Fire Department, a volunteer organization, and we're serving, I've been serving there for over 40 years as well. I started when I was 10. The panel so far has been very accurate with what they're saying, and it's very truthful that EMS and fire is in a crisis mode. And it is true that the state legislation and the legislators and the lawmakers passed laws that actually put the monkey on your back, the elected officials in the room, townships and boroughs, city. And there was actually, I have a copy. If anyone's interested, I can get you a copy of it. It's Act 7 of 2008, signed by Ed Rendell back in March of 2008 rather. And it does state that the local townships and boroughs are responsible for fire and EMS by the means and to the extent determined by the township, including the appropriate financial and administrative assistance for these services. Township shall consult with fire and emergency medical service providers to discuss the emergency services needs of the township. And last but not least, township shall require any emergency service providers receiving those township funds to provide the township an annual itemized listing of the expenditures of these funds before the township may consider budgeting an additional fund to the organization in the future year. So that's the law. And if this is the first time you've heard about this law, I'd be surprised. I'm also a member of the Council of Governments in Warren, actually one of the founding members back in 1995. Council of Government in Warren County, back in 2009, shortly after this law got passed, started to see a crack in fire and EMS in the volunteer ranks in our municipalities. And I think you'd probably find the same situation in Crawford County as well. And notice I didn't come in and say, hi, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. No, I'm not here for the government to help, but I am here to answer any questions as it relates to how we in Warren County are addressing this. And I can tell you that since 2009, we have at every one of our Council of Governments meetings discussed fire and EMS, predominantly EMS, because in Warren County, those people receive their funds, they receive their essential service known as EMS through volunteer firefighters, with the exception of the City of Warren, which the city firefighters provide that EMS for them. So 75% of Warren County is served by volunteer EMS ambulances and augmented by Dave Basnak's Emergent Care for ALS. And if you think that, and there's some brothers and sisters from the fire department in here. I recognize some of your wardrobe because I have that too. But those agencies are faced with three things, shortage of three things. One, machinery, which is expensive. This stuff is so expensive. Number two is manpower, which is probably the biggest problem we have in Warren County, is boots on the ground in our volunteer ranks. And three, money. And money has a big impact on that. Now, no one here wants to raise taxes, but I can tell you what we're going to be doing in Warren County, at least in my municipality. We found the neighboring volunteer fire department in Sheffield Township, that's fine, was not going to be able to provide the service to their community. So in a domino effect, the next neighboring community needed to provide that service. That was mine. And we decided, the 5 municipalities within my region, to form an intergovernmental co-op. We formed a very unique co-op of 5 municipalities, 1 borough, 4 townships. And we will, starting in January, be utilizing a paid solution. The paid solution will cost my municipality roughly 2 mills. And the commission members agreed that we had to do something because doing nothing for providing EMS was not a solution, and waiting 20 to 30 minutes for an ambulance to come was not going to be a solution for anyone in our neighborhood. So you're faced with a similar circumstance here, and as the case in Mercer County, right? As Clarion, Venango, pick one. We're all facing a situation that we don't necessarily want, but if we wait for the state to come up with a solution, forget about it. It's not going to happen. And if we're going to wait for the county commissioners to come up with a solution to come and help you here in Meadville, in the Meadville area, forget about that too. It's not their responsibility. The law, and sorry, Commissioner Henry, but I had to say that. And sorry, Senator and Representative, but this is on the shoulders of those that are in this room. You have to go back and talk to your other municipalities within the COG and come up with a solution. Thank you for your time. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. All right, now we're going to start anyone that has a question. Terry will come around to you. You can ask anyone on the panel, and we'll go from there. Terry, it's up to you.
Good job, Terry. My name is Larry Maddox. I'm a supervisor for East Mead Township. Got a question. Is there a model of EMS service? Is there a model of EMS service in the state that is successful? That you could use? Okay.
I'll answer that, Mr. Maddox. Appreciate your question. So there are models in the state that are municipal authorities that are the most successful. I would say they still struggle with recruitment and retention, but I would only go as far as the service down by Pittsburgh that have a municipal authority model where multiple municipalities together collect revenue and then run that revenue through an ambulance service. It's an authority of an ambulance. It's actually around the airport. The guy who actually owns that or runs that is J.R. Henry. He's a consultant as well. And that would, in my mind, would be the best model. But they still struggle with, obviously recruitment and retention. But I think they're probably above the pay grade and have the latest equipment. Is that okay for you guys?
Hey, Nate, are you familiar with that department?
Not right offhand here. I mean, having worked for Senator Volodkovich and having been involved in that area, I'm still not quite tuned into to that one.
It's Valley Ambulance Authority. You can look it up online. You can go to their website, and it tells you how they collect millage. And they actually had municipalities step out of that authority and then step back in after they tried to do their own system. And they got back into that system, and they created that authority.
Sure, and certainly there's several municipalities across the Commonwealth that are looking to team up together with the authority model. And I appreciate what's been said about the COGS. In my area, I'm in Cumberland County. Our capital region council of governments, we stepped up. We're able to receive a $2.2 million federal safer grant for our firefighting companies, 21 fire companies in the region. And now we're going to begin a conversation on what we can do on the EMS side of the equation.
And Mr. Maddox, for clarification, for the record too, if that's the model that works for Crawford County, I'm all for it. Let's do it authority. Let's not make it a for-profit, nonprofit. Let's make it an authority. I'm okay with that. Well, I'll dissolve tomorrow, and we'll go from there. But I think that's a great question.
No, I'm not here to point figures because this involves all of us, and there's no doubt why the governor of the state passed it on to the townships, because when things get done, the townships do it. So, with that in mind, I would behoove the people here from the government, things that do have some control over that or can make an impact on that, to institute in our trade schools that the state has around for the school districts a course in EMS services. EMT work. It's a good paying, it could be a good paying job, and should be a good paying job with the responsibilities they have. And also, I don't believe that the township should be liable for people that's going through their townships on their roads to provide for them the total cost of the service of EMS services for them if they have an accident in the township. I would think that maybe we could do a license fee when people get licenses, a $5 charge or $10, whatever it take to help offset the cost of this, or a cell phone fee to help offset this. We as a township cannot legislate that type of thing, but these people sitting before us have the people in Harrisburg to help us out on that thing, on the cost of this. So I just
Okay, one consideration, couple considerations. We could, hypothetically, we could increase some kind of tax. Some people have talked about an extra 1% sales tax. People have talked about a $5 a month cell phone tax for every phone. There's different things we could do, and we could set up a system similar to the Pennsylvania State Police and just have the state run the whole thing. The state decides where the ambulances are. The state decides what the staffing levels are. It's always a struggle when something's done at a statewide level to make sure that our area gets our fair share of stuff. A lot of people are suspicious when the state collects the gasoline tax. Are we getting everything we're entitled to? School funding, are we getting everything we're entitled to? So if we have it be a state-run system, I'm a little hesitant to want to go there. Now, the word representative is in my title, so I try to represent what people want. If they want us to do a statewide thing, we can. Another option would be the county authority. If you look around the room, you might all trust each other a lot more than you trust people from Philly and Pittsburgh and Scranton and every place else. If we could pass the county authority legislation and have the county have a leading role in EMS, that's an option that I think should be seriously considered. As far as tech, I was at a meeting. There's probably an update, Eric, but that one meeting I was at that you invited me to, the Crawford County Career and Technical Center, they didn't seem real eager to do like a daytime during the school year EMT class. They wanted to do a nighttime one. Did that ever change?
No, because they said the curriculum is attributable to the amount of jobs available. So a public safety curriculum, there have to be so many paid firefighter jobs available and paid EMS jobs. Does that sound right, Eric Costin? That's kind of what we heard was the amount. I want to make sure I had it right. They've come to our fire commission meeting and talked and said basically without that value, they're not interested in doing that curriculum at the VOTech level. I'm not sure if that's tied to a law though, Larry. It could be tied to a law too. I don't know.
And that's one of the reasons why we passed, and it was signed into law, a piece of legislation that's state-related, state-owned. Each one of the regions, a college in that region has to offer courses like this so that it makes it more accessible. One of the other things that I fought to do, and I think it was signed into law, is we have pushed and pushed the fire commissioner, and we finally, there's more courses online as well. Nate, did you want to add anything else?
You're right, Senator. I mean, and thanks to your leadership on the online fire training and the partnership program between higher education and basic education. That was certainly part of the mix of the latest round. So if folks in the room are not already familiar, I mean, back in June, Representative Ferry sponsored legislation 2157, which is now law, that repurposed $5.5 million of revenue from the fireworks taxes, and House Bill 397, which now sits on the desk of the governor, puts in place a number of programs to utilize that funding. It's named, one being the higher education, basic education partnership we just talked about, recruitment and retention programs here at the EMS level. We're talking about tuition and loan forgiveness here as well for EMS. Major shots in the arms on those fronts, as well as capital grants for facilities for first responders as well. So we're excited about that. Look, is that the panacea? Is that going to solve the issue overall? No, but it certainly moves the needle in the right direction, and it also increases the amounts for the EMS grants, specifically for the EMS grant, and ups the maximum award amount up to $15,000, whereas right now it's $10,000. So those are all positive things, and that's just the most recent things we've done here in Harrisburg over the last several years.
And some of that, we just did that the past few weeks on some of what he's talking about. Thanks, Dave.
Now, yeah, we all supported that, but in perspective, $5.5 million, there's 13 million people in Pennsylvania, so that's like 40 cents per person to help EMS. I mean, when you say $5.5 million, that sounds like a lot of money, but it's, you know, we need to think bigger than that.
Dave just wanted 30 seconds to help you on that.
So, EmergiCare, we have our own training center. We run a minimum of 4 EMT classes a year. We run 2 paramedic programs in parallel with each other, essentially, trying to produce as many providers as possible. And I can tell you we have no problem filling our EMT classes. What we struggle with is retaining those individuals to remain in EMS. In fact, so many of them are college students that are looking to get the college credit to be able to move on to, you know, nursing. We've had a lot of employees work for us that have gone on to be nurses and have actually gone on to medical school at Lee Common and become physicians. The course availability, and we do a lot with distance learning, so we transmit, you know, to Crawford County, Warren County, and continue to expand that program. And even Mercer County, we have a partnership here with Doug that we're doing our paramedic program in Mercer County to expand those programs. And but at the end of the day, what the struggle is to be able to pay a living wage to recruit and retain these individuals into the EMS career field.
Anybody else?
Just one other thing that I wanted to add to what Dave said, so kind of give everybody an idea. We have an education institute as well, so 9 out of every 10 of our students are doing EMS classes as stepping stones. In other words, they're going to PA school at Slippery Rock University, or they're Grove City College students in biology, they're going on to medicine and everything else. They have no intentions of being boots on the ground in an ambulance, and they'll tell you that right up front. So it's not filling the class, it's keeping them in the field and in the trucks. And to kind of give you an idea, if you compare a nursing home, in my area I have 6 nursing homes. Every one of those nursing homes, a certified nursing assistant is making $18 to $20 an hour. An LPN, which is 1 year of nursing training, is making upwards of $25 an hour. So put that in perspective of patient care, of the disparity between the front lines EMS people and the nursing homes. And I want to really explain this. I understand we've talked a lot about volunteer, the fire departments and stuff, but EMS in Pennsylvania needs to be treated equally. When I say equally, it doesn't matter if you're a 501c, a paid service, a nonprofit, doesn't matter what umbrella you're under. Every EMT that takes a class takes the same training. Every paramedic takes the same training. It's not about your umbrella of your organization, whether you're for-profit, nonprofit, or anything else. And if you look at most of the services that are shutting down, they're not nonprofit entities, okay? So keep this in perspective of talking about EMS. This is all EMS, not volunteerism or anything else. And you folks that are volunteer fire departments, how many of you have 5 men that you can put in your engine at one time? And you're gonna be hard pressed. And I'm a line officer and a life member of our fire department. And we're lucky if we get 3 people show up for our fire calls. When we used to run an ambulance, we actually had 2, and we shut that ambulance service down 15 years ago. So those are things to consider.
Hi, I'm John Lawrence from Richmond Township, and I understand and agree with your plight of money. I do. My question is maybe to the state representatives and to you, Mr. Henry, is this always falls on the property owner, and because that's the easiest tax to collect. And why can't there be something instituted where a per capita tax, where everybody would pay a fair share?
A great question, John. And so I want to answer and give it to Michelle and Brad. But so the answer I've given in these meetings I've been to so far, it's the only law that we can use. It's the only law in the books for us. And I will tell you, as a county commissioner, as you know, on the other days of my life, I think property tax is a terrible tax. I think it's people are tired of paying for service that are rendered. When Dave talks to you about payer mixes and who's using the system, you know, if you equate that down to where it is, the people, I've heard this exact same thing from people. Property tax is something people don't want to hear. I don't like it. I mean, I'm in my third year as a commissioner. You know, we're determined not to have another budget increase because of that, because people don't want to pay more property tax. But I'll leave it to them to. That's what the law is on the books, John, right now. That's why we're kind of strapped to where we're at.
We could change the law. We could do a per capita tax. That's something that I would support. We could do a cell phone tax. The problem with the cell phone tax, say it's $5 a month, that's $60 a year. Say you have 3 phones at home, $180 a year. Do you go to Andover and get your phone over there where you don't have to pay that? You know, a certain number of people would go out of state to get their phones. The per capita tax, I think, would be a fair way to do it. There would be a collection issue. I mean, there's people on Meadville City Council that weren't paying their city of Meadville per capita tax. So if we change the law that you can do a per capita tax and every adult has to pay $50 a year or whatever it would be, I don't know what the collection rate would be. Hopefully it would be 100%, but some people probably would not pay. With property taxes, if they don't pay, they lose their home. Now, indirectly, there's apartments where I grew up, just right down here, on the corner down here. Landlords, they do factor in the price of property taxes in the rent that they charge. So tenants actually do pay property taxes. They pay it indirectly. But smart landlords, they build the cost of maintenance on the property, insurance on the property, the money they invested to buy the property taxes, all those things are factored in. So indirectly, everybody pays property taxes. But I'm kind of an all of the above. We could pass a bunch of laws. We could say, okay, townships can do a per capita tax for EMS. They can do a township sales tax. They could do increased millage, however they want to do it. Or, like I said before, we could do it county-wide. If you have 500 people in your township, you're probably not going to get very far having your own ambulance. It's just not cost-effective. But if you can group together with multiple townships and other boroughs, it might be a better option.
Have you guys come up with a dollar amount? And I know, Eric, you had talked about an additional sales tax or something with the authority, leveraging a sales tax. So have you come up with a formula of how it would be distributed or a dollar amount that you need?
For per capita or cell phone? So the 1% sales tax, Doug can talk about Mercer. I don't have the Crawford numbers. I'll tell you that the 911 center is fully funded by a wire fee. It's $1.65. It's on your bill already. You'll see that from if your watch is cellular, if your iPad is cellular, if you have a home phone, if you have a cell phone, you pay $1.65 per month for that device. All that money comes to Crawford County. Now, Brad had a good point about this. Actually, Crawford County, although it's $1.65, we actually only receive $1.55 from that because somebody in the state changed the calculations. And actually, there's actually townships or counties, that receive more money than they actually put into their 911 fee. So, Brad, that is a valid point. But that covers every expense of our 911 center, all of our pay, our benefits, our tower service and fees. So you guys never see that out of the general fund. That money comes from there. So it does work in that idea, and that would fund 16 dispatchers, full-time dispatchers, administration as well. Doug, do you want to talk about Mercer County? Yeah.
So we looked at talking about sales tax. So these are numbers from Harrisburg. In Mercer County, Pennsylvania, if we had a 1% sales tax, and what I keep in mind to answer some of the questions, everybody would pay the 1% sales tax. So the transient people coming across the interstate system or visiting your area. So think about it in Crawford County. You have, some of your state game lands, your local places that people recreate, your interstate system. Anybody that would stop in Crawford County and bought a taxable item would pay 1 penny on the dollar. So I don't have those figures in Crawford County. I have them, but I don't have them with me, so I don't want to speak. But I can tell you in Mercer County, $16 million. So in 2022, if there was a 1% sales tax in Mercer County, Pennsylvania, it would generate $16 million. Now, to answer Senator Brooks's question, you keep in mind it takes approximately $750,000 to staff an ALS ambulance 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now, that can fluctuate from area to area. Yeah, we can't compare this in a variety of areas because of just the cost of doing business. That kind of gives you a rough idea of what it would cost. So that's $16 million divvied up, and you could do a county authoritative. And again, so you have an idea that county authoritative, that would be the gatekeeper, okay? And that authoritative would contract with 1 ambulance service, 2 ambulance services, 3 ambulance services, or 4, whatever, that would be needed to provide service to your county. And they would be the gatekeeper. And we would need to have some benchmarks there, and accountability and responsibility. So in other words, accountability from the services, accountability from the gatekeeper. And there would need to be benchmarks for this. And when I say benchmarks, in EMS, we benchmark things on patient outcomes and patient care. So kind of give you an idea, if you're having a chest pain, we look at, was a cardiac monitor and a 12 lead done in 5 minutes? And if it's a diabetic emergency, was a blood glucose check done rapidly to find out what the blood glucose was? And it goes on. If it's a stroke, was a stroke assessment done? And you can tie all those things to benchmarks that are already in place to your dollars. So those agencies that meet those benchmarks and that, or exceed those benchmarks, will get a little bit more money. And the ones that don't meet the benchmarks, you're probably not going to fund them, or you're going to fund them at a lower dollar figure. So there's different things, and every area is going to be different. I mean, we can't do this cookie cutter thing across. What works in one county will not work in another, okay? And kind of give you an idea of what's going on. Somebody hasn't brought it up, and I'm surprised, but in Pike County, Pennsylvania, they raised 12, there's 13 municipalities in Pike County. It's a bedroom community to New York City. In Pike County, 12 municipalities went together collectively and generated $2 million property tax for each municipality. And then the county commissioners matched it with some art money. So just this year, about $4.4 million raised in Pike County. Now, you know what that did to Pike County? An average response time of an ambulance was 27 minutes and limited ALS ability. Now they've cut the response time down to 8 minutes, and every municipality in Pike County has EMS. So there's things that collectively, each and every one of you, if you come together and a little bit here and a little bit there, will make a big difference. And, so, with I know people say about, well, collecting the 1% sales tax, would we need $16 million in Mercer County? Absolutely not. But we have fire departments in our county as well that are struggling, and they're lucky to get 2, 3 people out the door with a truck. In fact, just the other night, we had a structural fire. We had 10 fire departments there. So, and that's replicated across areas. So that money could be used for different things. And I don't care if you call it an EMS sales tax or whatever. Out west, they have several of those. There's a couple states out west. That's how they fund their whole state system for EMS, is a 1% sales tax.
Warren County Council of Governments, our COG, sent two letters to our state representatives and state senators, one in support of the Baker bill, which was the authority bill, and we did discuss that with our senator, and he said that may have a chance, but now it's going to be November, and there's only a few more sessions that they'll be voting on that, so I'll turn over. The other was the 1% sales tax, which in Warren County would bring in $6 million. And you wouldn't want to label it an EMS only. You would identify it as emergency services. And if you had those two combined, you had an authority that coordinated it across the county, and the tax of 1% from a sales tax perspective. And oh, by the way, sales tax are available to 2 counties in the state of Pennsylvania: Allegheny County, Philadelphia County. None of the other counties can raise that 1%.
Hi, I'm Mike Forbes from Union Township, and that's all I've heard about is raising taxes. And I think everybody here is kind of tired of more taxes. But I haven't heard anything about what programs that is being paid right now to colleges and universities, to them, the money going to them with all their endowment funds that they received from previous college people. Can you explain that, or can you give us some detail on that?
Yeah, like I said before, there's a lot of competing interests in Harrisburg. Different legislators advocate for different things. I don't mean to criticize one specific thing, but in Pennsylvania, we spend about $19,000 a year per student in K through 12 education. The national average is about $15,000 a year. So, you know, if you go out here to Maplewood or into town at Meadville, you know, if you have a classroom of 20 kids, there's $80,000 of more funding than that same classroom over on the Ohio side of the border. Now, the reason I mention that is in Harrisburg, a lot of legislators were pushing for a big education increase this year. That happens every year. A lot of us were pushing for an increase in the medical assistance reimbursement, you know, for EMS. Other people were pushing for an increase, even more money for the universities and colleges. And, you know, like your townships, we can spend each dollar once. You have 3 supervisors that can decide how you're going to allocate the money. We have 203 members in the House. I supported the legislation to reduce that. We have too many, in my opinion, but that's another topic. There's 50 senators, and then even if we reach an agreement, the governor has to sign off on it. So it is hard to get anything done in Harrisburg. And I'm about priorities. Personally, I think helping EMS is more important than giving Penn State more money. I think helping, EMS is more important than, you know, more money for, you know, whatever, libraries. Nothing against libraries, but it's just, now when you think about local government, well, let me back up a second. As you all know, there's different things done by different types of government. The county government, what Eric does, they do foster care and human services and programs for intellectual disabilities and mental health. They run the prison, you know, the court system, you know, things like that. Those are done at the county level. At the federal level, we all know they handle the military and the postal service and money and treaties with, you know, all that stuff. We all know our civics. The municipal level, that's where local streets, water, sewer, you know, playgrounds, you know, garbage, fire, EMS, that's where that's done. Now, like I said before, we can change the law. We can make it a state-run thing. I don't think people would like that very much. I think a county-run thing would be a better way to do it. Anybody in this room in less than 5 minutes can get a hold of Eric or one of the other 2 commissioners. You try to get a hold of the governor, that might not be as easy.
Okay, so I have a few questions. Number one, me and Eric's had this discussion, and I'd like a straight answer. Are fire departments able to bill insurance companies for QRS if they're not the ambulance service taking them to the hospital.
So Eric's in the back, and they do have billing right in East Mead, and the answer is no, right, Eric? Is that correct? You can answer, please, because you're a fire.
And the reason for that on the payer system, the person that gets the bill in first is going to receive that sum. If I see a patient at an urgent care and they go to the emergency department, somebody's not going to get paid on that. So the QRS typically is not going to be reimbursed when an ambulance is called to transport.
Okay, so, and I don't need the microphone because I'm loud enough. But you have to understand when Lawrenceville's ambulance doesn't get out the door and there's a call out at Beaver Center, and Coneyville doesn't get out, Springboro doesn't get out. For Meadville or Coney Lake to take that call, if it's a heart attack, might as well call the coroner. That's the fact of life. So they call for QRS. That local fire department has to put the fuel in the rig and have the manpower to just get out there. So some things have to change. And whatever insurance company got to the state level of government and said, here's a couple dollars, please only send us one bill, that needs to change. You should be able to bill for QRS, ambulance transport, and the hospital's gonna bill you. That's fact of life. And the state government has to take care of that and get it right to where the local fire departments can bill for that service.
And I would say, we've had lots of talk about this, Kevin. I agree that, at the end of the day, that we in the ambulance, we replace any supplies used by QRS because it's expensive, supply for supply. I would never not advocate for some type of reimbursement, but as you can see, when we're at Medicaid, we're at 1/4 the cost just to run the ambulance out there. And Kevin had a great point. Saturday night, the only ambulance service, the only paramedic left in Crawford County went to the Whole Shot Raceway for back pain. The only paramedic left in Crawford County went to the Whole Shot Raceway for back pain. I'm sorry, excuse me? Well, actually, I'll pull the chart up for you if you want me to read it. I don't think you want me to. At the end of the day, the point is that's the only paramedic left, and so that was it. There was none left anywhere, and so you're right, Kevin. Those traveling 20 miles, 30 miles, those things at the end of the day, those things don't get paid, and that's a problem because fire departments that's the fuel that the township's giving you, and the maintenance of your vehicles and the wear and tear. So I agree with you.
So another question, because I got a couple of them. So
But there's other people too, so
yeah.
keep it brief.
So the other question is, the fire department, local fire department in Lawrenceville, they have to have a contract for paramedics. Why? Why should they be paying up front before the insurance is even billed? They don't get as much reimbursed as what they're paying out the door.
Sure, yeah. So EMS services, ALS services with BLS services typically have joint billing agreements, and that's where that comes into play there. And so that's actually a benefit to the patient because then they're not receiving two different bills to where they're going to be subject to potentially out-of-pocket costs twice over. And so, at the end of the day, even as an ALS service, it's very expensive for the rubber to hit the road, right? So sending an individual out, even in just a paramedic response unit, again, there's still all of those financial pressures that are, that are bound by them as well, and also that cost of readiness. But what you're describing is when there's a joint billing agreement in place, and the reason for that is that it takes the burden off of the patient, and the BLS service that is responding is also able to bill at that ALS level because they are providing an ALS service through a contractual agreement with an ALS provider.
And while I have the mic, I get to ask a question or a follow-up. The insurance end of it, For me, I don't understand. If I bill an insurance company, why aren't they paying? So if the fire department bills the insurance company, they can just say, we're not going to pay this. We don't care. And that's fine with our legislators. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't, if they don't pay, they're usually locked up. Why aren't the insurance company required to pay for fire service and EMS?
Fantastic question. Okay, so everything hinges on the Medicare guidelines. So to answer your question, sir, about the fire departments, Medicare looks at EMS as a transport entity, not healthcare, but transport. So some of you have heard this, and not to insult anybody, but if we don't haul, we don't get paid. And if we do get paid, and the insurance companies, who, by the way, all of them follow what Medicare does, which is the federal government, okay, alluding back to what some people have said here, you don't want the federal government or the state government running things, but everything hinges on what Medicare does. So if they do an audit and they deem that it was not medically necessary for you to go by ambulance, they can take that money back from the ambulance service. And so to answer the plight of QRS services, by the federal law and other state laws, you, and again, this is not to insult QRS, because I applaud those men and women that go out there to those calls and do this stuff, but by law, you can't bill the insurance companies because you didn't transport the patient. Now, you could send your patient a bill, and again, chances are you're probably not going to get paid. You're going to spend more money trying to get the money. And there has been legislation, so you know, and again, there was legislation passed for the treat and release bill, where if you treated somebody and they said, I'm refusing to go to the hospital, I'll go in my car, or my buddy will take me, or whatever, that EMS could still bill for that. And the insurance companies fought that tooth and nail. And today, we're still not getting paid for those types of calls.
Huh? Oh. I'm Chuck Lawrence. I'm Borough Manager in Sagertown. I am an EMT. I am a fireman, so I understand. I want to say, Eric, you've articulated the problem very well. You've gone to most municipalities, if not all. You did that in Sagertown. I'm not a tax guy. I mean, I've been involved in borough government for 30 years and never voted for a tax increase, but the $500,000 is acceptable if everybody does it. That's our problem. We don't want to pay a $500,000, put it in the budget, and we're doing budget right now. But if then the neighboring municipalities don't do it, I mean, we're subsidizing ourselves. So if you had said at one time that you were going to send a letter out to the municipalities and say, if you don't do this, I'm not responding in your township.
And that's the truth. At the end of the day, it was a Westmead supervisor who said, listen, we don't want to, same thing, same spiel. I live in Westmead. They wanted to make sure that everybody was paying their fair share. And I've told everybody, I'm just a private business guy, and actually Dave could do this too. He's a nonprofit, but if he wanted to enact, and actually he is right now, I think I've told you guys in my meetings, he's actually going to the city of Erie and discussing these problems in the city of Erie, which is a much larger issue because of the number of calls that he's running. But we're not required to provide that coverage. And my goal is to make sure that we find solutions, because, and Chuck, I can appreciate that everybody, hopefully everybody does, want to help out. And these are all good talks, and this is a great talk. I just caution you, if you just Google PA ambulance closures, it's scary. It's scary what happens. And so I just want to make sure I can still provide service at the end of the day. There's lots of rhetoric out there from people who don't understand business, who talk a lot of talk. But at the end of the day, I'm for profit, he's nonprofit, we're in the same boat. And we're in the same boat because we're mandated to transport people at less than the cost to run the service. That's it. We're mandated to run the service at less than the cost to run the service. We don't have any other option. We can't go to someone's house when we respond to 911 calls and say, sorry, we're not taking you because we don't like your payer mix. We can't do that. We have to transport them. And as Doug said, there are people who they go to we'll go to an overdose. We'll provide them Narcan. They'll refuse care, and we get $0. And I'll give you another side of the insurance, and Brad can attest to this. The insurance lobbyists are very strong. In Pennsylvania, there's still insurance companies who send the bill directly to the patient after we transport them. thousands of dollars they'll send directly to the patient. Now, if you get a bill or check in the mail for $2,500 for a trip to Erie or a trip to Pittsburgh, and it's made out to you, it's made out to Brad, and Brad wants to go on vacation, Brad can actually cash that check, his name's on it, and turn it in and keep the money. And at the end of the day, I can send them to collections, but most folks in that situation don't care if I send them to collections. That is still a law in 2022 today, because, and I was told this, the insurance lobbyist is much more powerful than all of us in the EMS lobbyists. We have very small numbers. They want us to be part of a network and pay us less money, and then they'll agree to it. They don't want to pay us the race to do it. So think about that. Even the small amount of commercial insurance we do take, those people are getting those checks directly to them. They're not sending it to the ambulance service. And they're keeping the checks, or they're cashing the checks, and we're getting paid $0 for that. That's a problem.
And to give you an even better idea how insurance works is, typically Medicare, one of our most common, over half of what really we're billing. So most of the time, we're writing off about 51% of our bills off to what we call contractual. In other words, we have negotiated rates with the insurance companies. They're only willing to pay so much. So you might see like that ambulance bill, or you might see that explanation of benefits from the insurance company. We can bill them for as much as we want to, but the insurance company is only going to pay what the negotiated rate is. And so the typical average, our average, I can speak on behalf of our service, our contractuals is about 51%. So in other words, over half of what we bill gets written off that we never see. And so the other thing that we also seen this year as a record was an increase in what Medicare is going to pay us reimbursement, which sounds great at 8.7%. Everybody thinks that's great. Well, what you don't understand is that there's this thing called sequestration that's supposed to hit on January 1st, which is actually going to subtract 2% off of that increase. And then depending on how much Medicare is spent providing their programs, because again, federal entity, federal government, depending on how much that system's been taxed financially over the past year, they could implement the PAYGO program, which has the potential to take like another 4% off of that increase. So what started out to be a pretty good increase to help with inflationary pressures is really dwindling down to a whole lot of nothing, because even though they're like, we're giving you 8.7%, but really we're finding other ways that will probably take anywhere from 2 to 6% off of that, which really brings it back down to, all right, in a world where we see the CPIs raised by over 8% in the last year, we're going to be compensated an additional 2%. So again, we're still right where we left off, to where it doesn't cover the cost of service.
Eric is right about how that works with the reimbursement. If any of you hit a deer on the way home tonight, and you go down to Dillamans or someplace to get your car fixed, your insurance company, the check's going to be payable to you and the auto body shop. That's usually how they do it. But if one of you need an ambulance tonight, the check just has your name on it. So you can pay the ambulance service or buy a large screen TV, whatever you want to do. And that's not right. Now, we've had a lot of conversations about this in Harrisburg. We fight about this issue a lot because nobody else is in that situation. If you go to Meadville Medical Center tonight, the check doesn't come to you. They send it right to Meadville Medical Center. So that is something that we have to get changed. One other thing I want to mention, just to put things in perspective, Eric, not to put you on the spot, if you could, not just you, but any ambulance service in Crawford County, if you tried to cover the whole county with one ambulance, but a 3 or 4 hour response time was acceptable, you might be able to do it with one ambulance. If you wanted to have a 5-minute response time, you might need 30 ambulances. Can you give us an idea of what the real numbers are?
There are 6,500 911 requests across the county. That's probably up now from, that was a pre-COVID number last we had. But at the end of the day, my ambulance service runs 6,600 total calls. That's ambulances, emergencies, and transports itself. And we have been the only ambulance left to the Ohio line. We already covered north to Erie County line. We covered 2 townships in Mercer County, French Creek and Deer Creek, and then east with Randolph. We split Randolph with Townville, and that's kind of our coverage area. On a regular basis every night there is 1 or 2 ambulances available, and we try to move them around the best we can do. Client Lake runs 1 24-hour ambulance. We run 2.5, and it sounds funny when I say half, but that means I just have one person that showed up for work, and that there might be the supervisor, or we can fill in. More oftentimes than not, my wife or I will come meet the other ambulance crew and make that full crew. So Brad's right; it's really an a la carte thing. If you want a good response, then you have to pay more for more ambulances. And I will say that Kurt Dennis from Greenwood had a good point about money, and I appreciate that. That at the end of the day, does money solve every problem with EMS? No. But if you lose one more ambulance service, if you lose Client Lake Ambulance or Meadville Ambulance, as a businessman, I'm like, listen, I just can't do this anymore. Then it will change the outcome of people, and that's why we're here today. The last 18 years I've covered your townships. I haven't come to you and talked to you about anything about EMS readiness fees, and because I haven't had to, and that's why I came this year, because at the end of the day, it's just where we're at. And again, it doesn't matter what the model is. We're all there. So
I break stuff down so I can understand it. Usually, I don't know if other people do that. But if there's 6,500 EMS calls a year, that's about 18 a day. On average, it's once every hour and 20 minutes. But the problem is there might be calls 1 minute apart from each other. Like Eric was saying, somebody was saying, there could be 3 or 4 calls if you listen to the 911 dispatches. So yeah, you obviously have to have multiple ambulances, but then it gets down to the financing. I'm just curious, Eric, when we were trying to figure out that one day, we were talking about the cell phone tax. I can't remember what we figured out. Like, how much a month would it be if every single cell phone in Crawford County paid?
Robbie and I talked about their low number of insurance. We calculated through the last budget for the 911 system. There's 112,000 devices that are taxed per month in Crawford County. So if you do 112 times 3 times 12, that's what the money would be. And that would, again, as we've talked, Doug said it best. That would be a fire and EMS fee. It wouldn't just be just EMS. West Mead, who's one of the better townships to provide money for their fire departments, would be able to tap into that, and that money could go to their fire departments and save that money. What is that, Brad?
So you're saying, what was you're saying $3 a month?
$3 a month times 115,000 devices times 12. That's what it is. I mean,
115 times 3 times 12. That's
$4.1 million. That's what that would be if it was a $3 tax. And that would give the townships the ability to pay the fire departments for what they needed, supplement the ambulance service as needed, and no one would have to raise their taxes. I'm with you, Mike. Nobody wants to hear about property taxes. Nobody, and myself included. Hopefully that's why you elected me, because I can't stand property taxes, and that's what it's terrible for me to actually ask that, because at the end of the day, it's the only thing on the books.
Is that a state requirement, or can county enact the cell phone fee?
I don't believe counties or municipalities have the authority to do that. That we'd have to pass a state law to do that. Just out of curiosity, this isn't a scientific poll, but per capita taxes, which I suppose would be similar to what the cell phone tax is, but if we did a per capita tax or a phone and device tax or a property tax, this is probably going to be very few hands. Does anybody prefer the property tax option? One person does. Chuck does. Well, who would prefer a per capita tax? I'll do it. The last 2 options, per capita tax and a phone tax. Who would prefer the per capita option? Okay, how about the phone tax option? Okay, so that kind of gives us some. Now, who would prefer that we pass at the state level? By we, I mean the State House and State Senate and the governor. If we pass all of them, we say, okay, township, you can do a property tax if you want to. You can do a phone tax. You can do a per capita tax. Whatever works in your area, you can do it that way. Would you support that?
Property tax weighs heavily on the elderly. And at this time in their life, they don't need to be taxed more.
Oh, no, I agree.
That's why I'm against a property tax.
Okay.
It's just,
tax right now.
yeah, anyhow, but I understand it's needed, it's just that I think the phone tax raises enough money for fire departments and EMS. That's the only way to go, and that should be done.
Another thing with
right
property
away.
taxes, you're not balancing it evenly. I mean, I understand, the guy who has a double wide that he lives in, his property values are not gonna be as high as the guy. But you got a guy who worked his whole life and he's got $1 million home, what's his property tax gonna be compared to the guy there? You know,
And I have 3 houses, 3 different townships. Somebody pays 3 times as much as somebody else. You know, of course, I'm a user fee kind of guy. If you use it, you pay for it. But I understand, you know, the emergency we're in now, statewide. But it is a statewide issue.
It's really a nationwide. If you Google Ohio EMS crisis, West Virginia EMS crisis, it's really the same thing all over the country. Now Eric, not to put you on the spot, is there much leakage with the $1.65 a month 911 fee for the dispatch centers? I mean, are they able to track those to make sure people aren't going to Ohio or something?
It's not tracked, but we get 83%, and the 17%, 15% of that goes to special projects, 2% goes to PEMA for admin. So it's not really tracked in their way, but.
No, what I meant was, if somebody drove to Ohio and got their cell phone there, is $1.65 a month from that phone making its way to Crawford County, or don't they have a way to? I mean, I don't know.
It would be a PEMA question.
Don Sutter with Randolph Fire Department in Randolph Township. Do you have an estimate on the $500,000 tax on how much money is going to be collected? That's the first question. Second question, is it going to be distributed amongst the just the paid service, or the volunteer services, or the QRS service? You know, because everybody is responding to these.
The actual EMS tax is designed for the ambulance, and from my perspective, is to continue operations. It's above 250, but under 3 because it's a percentage based. Like Robbie Horvat's here from Vernon Township. We cover 90% of Robbie's township. Carnegie Lake covers 10. He has 980 calls. We do 890 of them, as an example. Townville, Bill Taylor's here from Townville. When we went to talk to Richmond, we discussed splitting that fee in half because we cover half of Richmond, they cover half of Richmond. We have multiple townships like that. Venango Township, Cussawga Township. We cover halves of those areas, and that's why it's not calculated because we'd have to figure out what we have to pare down to is the per call share of the call. So in Vernon, for instance, a lot of those calls where we cover, that's in commercial areas. And Robbie has a dialysis center. Robbie has a cancer center. Robbie has a medical center. He has 2 Med Expresses. He's got a lot of calls on this side of Vernon. That's why his calls are higher.
Well, the QRS service, especially in Randolph Township, covers 100% of those calls.
Yeah.
So that's why.
I don't disagree, Don. I think there should be some fire fee for that. Absolutely, I agree with you.
Not in this 1.5 or this.
That wasn't my intention. No, I mean again, but I think I agree with you. It should be some other fee for that. So.
Most people are aware of this probably already, but like every fire department in Pennsylvania qualifies for the Fire Commissioner Grant Program. That's funded by part of the tax on slot machines. Most departments get around $12,000 a year. The EMS grant, that's less. It's probably, what is it, Eric? Oh, 15,000?
It's now 15,000 with the House Bill 397 that was just passed. So it's currently 10,000. House Bill 397 would take it up to 15,000.
And again, that sounds like a lot of money, but when you look at 24 hours a day, 7 days, 365 days a year, it's not really that much money, but it helps a little bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you, George.
My question is, for immediate relief, until you decide what you're going to do, raising the grant money from 10,000 to 50,000 or whatever, that would be a big help. And at the last meeting that we had here, I said that there are a lot of fire departments and ambulance services in Crawford County that are not taking advantage of that grant program. If we could help the township secretaries and supervisors to help them fill out the applications for these grants, I think that would be a lot better for, we could help each other. But right now, I don't know how many fire departments and ambulance services there are in Crawford County total.
There's 26 fire departments. Thank you, Rob, for looking at you. There's 26 fire departments, and then ambulance-wise, if you from east to west, Emergicare is in Titusville. There's Townville Ambulance, Bloomfield, Spartansburg, Centerville, myself in Meadville, and then out west there's Lionsville, Conneautville, Springboro, Summit, and Class. So those are the
And I
ambulances.
think there were 19 of those that did not apply for the grants. So I didn't know how many total there were.
Some fire departments don't do the EMS side, and they can if they think they have the QRS license. So
Another question related to that is, can a for-profit organization like can you apply for those grants?
well, and Doug and I were talking about this the other day. We have not because we were told we weren't allowed to, and so we did not apply for the grant. And Doug, did they tell you that maybe we can now or something, and maybe the guy on the phone can help? But we literally asked, and they said no, and we said okay. I mean, so.
Well, I would think that even if you didn't get paid as much or whatever, if someone who's providing the services should be able to apply for the state grants.
If that's not the case, we can change, well, I can't guarantee we can change it. We can try to change that law. Several years ago, we added career fire departments. It used to just be volunteer departments. So, yeah, so now, like Meadville can get it now, Titusville can get it. But yeah, when you're in the back of an ambulance, it doesn't really matter whether it's a volunteer department or a career department or a nonprofit department. When you call, they need to come.
Which entity you were open to add to the grants? Was this QRS or was it some other entity?
Well, the question was for like the for-profit ambulance service companies, businesses. They don't qualify for the fire commissioner grant, do they?
I believe they do now. I'll have to double check that and get back to you. But there was also discussion this last go around. It was reauthorized in the 2019-2020 session, the fire and EMS grant. We did have a discussion about adding QRS, and unfortunately, without added revenues, there was some pushback against adding them at that time.
Is there a question here?
First, I'll say with the townships that were questioning about QRS and getting paid for QRS, as a township, you're allowed to have a millage on the fire department. Our township has a 1 mil fire tax that provides about $22,000 to the fire department yearly. That helps them with their QRS costs, amongst other things. Plus, they do all the grants, and we've been lucky to get those grants. And Eric and I have brought this up. I also serve on the EMS Commission, a lifelong EMT, 911 dispatcher. The western part of the county, if a half mil tax would just solve the problem, that'd be great. But the western part of the county is running into the issue where, and I brought this to Eric, and Eric never had thought about that. And the question is, how do we do this appropriately? Because we'll just take Greenwood Township, for instance. If I were to put a half mil tax on tomorrow, that would be $11,060. And that would be for the one ambulance service, Conneaut Lake Ambulance, that covers our township. Now, Conneaut Lake Ambulance has one ambulance that covers 1/3 of the county, her jurisdiction. And so if that ambulance is out on a call, Meadville Ambulance will be dispatched by the 911 center because they're the next closest ambulance to come take care of the patient. And I had asked Eric originally, I said, Eric, are you just going to come take care of that patient? Well, no, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. And I understand why, because he has a business to do. And I understand he has a business, but he's going to charge the township a fee. At the time, it was $500. I know he hasn't made that decision on what it's going to be, but I used $500 for the terms of the conversation. So then I looked at the numbers of calls that we have in Greenwood Township. There's about 100 to 110 EMS calls a year. He covers about 30% of those. So 30 to 35 calls a year would be covered by him. At $500 a piece, That's $15,000 that the township's going to have to come up with in their budget to pay him for covering those calls. So then it comes to the question of how do you know, what is the correct thing? If some townships are doing a $500,000 and that's all they need to do, obviously the constituents of Greenwood Township are going to say, well, wait a minute, why are we given this $500,000 tax and then paying an additional $15,000? You know, my initial thought was you take the 11,060 divided by the number of calls that you would have in the township in a year, and then have both entities, Meadville and Conneaut Lake, submit a form monthly to the township and says, we have 5 calls this month. Okay, 110 divided by 11,060 is $120. So you did 5 calls, that would be X amount of money for that month. I don't know, I mean, what's the panel think as far as situations like that where there's only one ambulance to cover your area?
Actually, Kurt and I went from hanging up on each other once to actually come up with a solution. So it's great. I think that's a good solution because Kurt wanted to make sure that he's protecting his township, but he didn't want to provide, you know, he understood where he came from, and his, you know, that ambulance service hasn't asked for that $500,000 either. And we do cover 33, we ran 190 calls west of our service area last year. So we've been Pine Township, we've been in Conneautville Borough, Conneaut Township, we've been all those places when the ambulance isn't available. And so that, I mean, actually, Kurt, I think that's a good idea, is to do it that way. Anybody else want to talk about that? Doug, maybe?
Kurt, that's a great idea, and I've been asked the same thing in Mercer County, you know, with, yeah. And so we're looking at that as well because as municipal leaders, they're concerned, and they should be concerned. And again, that's why I say, too, unfortunately, and nobody wants to hear this, but the municipalities have been saddled with the responsibility of this, and that's where I think this is great to have those conversations, and they need to have that. So if you have, you know, again, in Mercer County, we have 4 paid ambulance services. We just, one of the fire departments started an ambulance service. It's under the volunteer fire department, but they're paying all their personnel to run that ambulance, and they're only running in one municipality. But at the end, the taxpayers or whoever is footing the bill, the municipalities, deserve accountability, responsibility, and I think those are the open dialogue. And I kind of agree with you. You know, look at the calls that are in your municipality, and you know who's responding to them, and those are the people that should be getting paid. And so, again, that may work here, may not work elsewhere, but it's a start.
And Kurt, you bring that up. Sorry, just to dovetail off that. That's another thing that we see. So obviously, we're a much larger service that we see an issue with grant funding. So actually, that $10,000 from the assistance to firefighters. So we cover parts of 7 counties. We respond to about 46,000 requests, EMS requests a year, and we receive the same $10,000 that a service that runs 500 calls a year also receives. So I think, you know, not only is it a concern and a barrier, you know, and how do you divide up township dollars like that? It's the same thing with the grant. And when we seen the Act 10 money come through, it was the same thing. It was a $37,000 grant for every EMS entity that applied for it, that qualified for it. You know, we received the same $37,000 as one of our neighboring volunteer departments that also turns over 65% of the calls that they're dispatched to. You know, they received the same amount, even though, so I mean, there's a whole disproportion, and I think it's, you know, it has to be looked at multifaceted, you know, not just from that perspective, but also how the grant funds are generated or spread out.
I hate to bring this up again, but everybody here knows what happens with the tax. It goes up again. When is a tax enough? Because no one knows that. And also, I'd like to get some information on how much does Pitt get? How much does Penn State get? How much does Allegheny College get? How much does Grove City get? There's money there that they don't need because of their endowment funds. You can reduce that. Everybody here is more important than those endowment funds that they're getting. I've always heard taxes. Enough about the taxes. Let's get some solutions.
I sit on Borough Council in Linesville. And as been pointed out tonight, every municipality is responsible for providing EMS and fire service. If I have to sign a contract with any one of you gentlemen or with a volunteer organization, then the people of Linesville expect your ambulance to show up when there's a need. If you're not able to provide that service for whatever reason, and you have to call in another ambulance service, you pay the bill.
That's a great comment. Who's your ambulance provider now? How many times have I been in the borough last year?
Quite a few.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's my point. Like my primary service area that I went to all these folks. I'm not saying that these meetings were all great. We had some tough meetings, but I respect everyone here because I think they all understand, how important this is. But at the end of the day, and that's Kevin. That's where Kurt and I were talking about. It comes back to some responsibility about the township. Same thing with the grant. If we're going to provide as much coverage as we can, driving to Lionsville 15, 20 times a year. That is the responsibility of the ambulance that you primarily have cover. But that's between you and that coverage. So,
If you're signing a contract with a paid service that says they're going to provide the service 24/7, anytime somebody calls in Linesville Borough, Pine Township, Quantitt Township, then you're saying when you sign that contract, you will have the manpower and the equipment when ambulance call comes in to provide it. And if you can't, as this gentleman was saying, how do you decide who gets what?
the half mil tax was, I guess I agree with Mike. I think tax is terrible to talk. And I would say the other thing, Mike, on the township level is too, where do you allocate your funds and what are they doing? And that's what you're trying to say here, I think, and I agree with you. What to your point, though, in your discussion of that, Dave can give you the 24-hour day, 7-day week price, right, for an ambulance. If you want an ambulance to cover Lionsville 24 hours, 7 days a week, that's going to be committed and answer all the calls, or you can talk about what's going on the books, but that price is going to be much higher than that cost.
Aspect, you said you guys all run business, and that's what it is. Where it's paid service or volunteer, it's a business. Right. So you can't split that money 4 different ways because there's different ambulances running calls in your town or your municipality, because then you're not going to be able to pay anybody enough to cover it.
Well, and like Kurt said, you're just divvying up the total amount between the services that provided, correct, Kurt, in the township. Not, if it's 10 here, 10 here, and 10 here, you're splitting that money up from the whatever you received.
And everybody would be agreeable to that?
If they all signed a contract, they would, I guess. I mean.
Okay, we got another question here.
Hey, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, or anybody else up there on the panel, but isn't it written that it's up to a $500,000?
Sure, and I'll have Paul. Paul, you want to answer this because Paul's in the line.
Otherwise, from 0 to $500,000, up to $500,000. And then I have a couple other things here.
Yeah, you can raise an EMS tax over $500,000, but it takes a referendum. You have to put on the ballot. So up to $500,000, you don't need a referendum. So you could adopt at your next budget meeting $500,000 without having to go to the taxpayers. But if it's going to be over $500,000, you have to put it on the referendum.
Yeah, but my question was this, that it's up to $500,000.
Correct.
Otherwise, if we chose to give less, we can.
Sure.
But it's up to $500,000 before we would have to make any other changes. Or
yeah, I'm not sure
he's
offering. I'm not sure he's offering a Cadillac plan and a Chevy plan here, because I think he offers a Cadillac plan. Here's what I can tell you. In the 5 municipalities that I told you about in Warren County that formed together, our budgets are going to go up by $160,000, and that's 5 of 25 municipalities, and we're the only municipalities that are doing it. Do we want to do this? We have no choice but to do this. We looked at two options. One was an emergent care option, the other was a City of Warren option. And we looked at many options. One was to stage an ambulance with 2 people in it for 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, which that would take care of half of our calls in our municipalities. But unfortunately, it was going to cost $300,000 to do that. And then we went to the municipalities and we said, can you absorb $300,000? And the answer was absolutely not. The best option was to have something a lot less than that. So we're going to be funding this through, you have your choice. You can fund with grant funding. You can fund it with money you have in your reserves, or you can raise taxes. Now, not all municipalities in Crawford County have a local services tax. Some do, some don't. So you could use a local services tax towards EMS, I believe, right? Yep.
Well, you know, I think we've heard a lot of solutions in the room tonight, and all of them pretty legitimate. And I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't realize what the law states to them, that they're responsible for public safety in general, okay? Fire departments, ambulances, whatever it may be, EMS, whatever. I still believe that the most reasonable solution is to look hard at that cell tax and use our legislators, our representatives to help us get there. I don't want them to run it, but what I want them to do is be in the driver's seat to help us get there. Okay?
Yeah, I think I can support that. Warren County Council of Governments, French Creek Council of Governments, if we both wrote letters together, similar letters to the legislation, would it have more power than each municipality trying to send a letter? If you have a Council of Governments, leverage the Council of Governments, have the operation of, have Lyle write the letter, have you guys agree to it, send it, and Warren County Council of Governments will do the same thing.
Here's another thing too, you know, on the Mike Kelly level, he could help reimburse Medicare, Medicaid. Medicare, okay. But that needs to be looked at as well. So I think there's a lot of options here. And you know, when you think about it, I bet you everybody in this room, if you asked them, do you have your cell phone? Because everybody was told to sign something before they got in here, or when they got in here. But I bet you every hand goes up in here that they have a cell phone. And I'll bet you most of these people didn't even realize they were paying a tax because it didn't matter, okay? So you're going to do it because that's what's going on today. You're going to carry this stupid thing because these are what we live by. And that tax on that, to me, is the answer, and is the solution to this problem. Equally. Every cell.
Same as the 911 center's financed.
Right.
It would be the same way. Money go back to the county splits it up among the, I mean, that's the best way to do it.
The county would get all the 911, then you would have to divide the money in.
I mean, or municipalities, whatever.
And I think it would help your fire departments as well, because if you generate that kind of money, I'll tell you what, at one point in time, we had enough money in there to fund our fire departments. Now we scrape every year to do it. We give them, what is it, $88,000 a year for 2 departments, okay? And it's pretty tough for them to live on that even, okay? But they do it, but here again, we've had to rob Peter to pay Paul. And if you look at what it cost us for equipment, we just paid the most for a piece of plow equipment, and we put a used plow on it. And it was 200 and what, Jill? 216,000, something like that? Yep.
An ambulance is what, 200,000, Eric? And a fire engine's about 500,000. An aerial is $1 million. So yeah, that stuff is expensive. I keep forgetting we have the Senate staffer on the phone. I forget your name. I apologize.
It's Nate Silcox, and nowadays it's 3 times that amount also.
Yeah, but anyways, on the 911 fee that goes to fund the 911 centers, do you know, is there a method to make sure if somebody from Pennsylvania resident, they buy a cell phone in New York or Ohio or Maryland, is that $1.65 a month getting to Pennsylvania, or does the state have no way of getting that?
As long as they're being billed in Pennsylvania, so say you bought the phone in Ohio and you live in Meadville and Verizon is billing your Meadville address, you're paying that $1.65 to the state.
Okay, so hypothetically, if we raise the fee $3 a month to cover EMS, we could probably set it up the same way.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have any more questions for anybody?
So Eric, I guess a good question for you. What is the sum of money that it takes to run your ambulance, like a year? And one time you had membership fees. I don't know if you're operating that now.
Yeah, so membership fee, that's a good question. Subscription fees, most ambulance subscription rates, people participate anywhere between 10 and 18% of the time. A good number in emergent care is, what is your number now? 20? You probably have a better number than the rest of us. What's your? For membership? Yeah. How many people participate you cover?
I just got my report, it's 22%.
22%. That 22% would be high. So for a family, and don't quote me because my wife is the one in charge of it, I think it's 50, 55, something like that. It's on my website. But again, people don't buy memberships because they don't think they ever need an ambulance. And then when they get that big bill in the mail, then they want to buy a membership. And we don't do that because it doesn't obviously make sense, right? So, you know, at the end of the day, a lot of people do, and we have people who've been members of Meadville Ambulance Service, families generationally, as they have the entire time, 1958. They bought memberships. They're still dialing 724-7595 for emergencies. Those people are the same people. It's just that not enough people buy memberships for it. You know, they just not enough people want to join in the membership program. So, yes, annually.
My question was, how much does it cost you to run your business?
So as Dave and these guys talked about the cost, so you know, $750 is probably a little bit low on the after COVID. So it's probably $850 per 24-hour ambulance. We have 2 24-hour ambulances and then a half. So sometimes we can get 3, sometimes we can get 2.5, sometimes we get 2. So if you put those two together, that's 1.6. If you add the rest of the expenditures in, we're a little bit over $2 million for what it costs to run the ambulance service at Meadville. $2.1, $2.2 million. And I can show you the expenditures. I'll give you a summary of that. It's not a problem, Mr. Maddox. So
it's for profit business, and I don't begrudge anybody. You know, you got a lot of headaches, but the thing of it is whatever we do, I don't want to be back here next year trying to renegotiate this thing.
Amen, Mr. Maddox. I agree.
Let's do it right.
I agree with you, and I think what my goal is out of this meeting, I got to tell you, we've been to breakfasts, we've been to dinners, we've been doing this for 10 or 12 years. This is the best conversation about EMS that I've been a part of in 10 years, because the reason why is the people who are required to do it are sitting in this room, and the person who can change the law, those two folks are here. You know, we as EMS providers, our hands are tied. And so I agree with you, Mr. Maddox. I think at the end of the day, and I've told municipalities this, if you have rescue plan dollars set aside and you don't want to raise taxes, you can use that money to handle the EMS fee for 2022. You can do that. And I know John and I talk about how it's not a repetitive thing. It does go away. I understand that. But for me, that gives us a year to figure this out. And if we continue to push, and I would say this too, Brad and Michelle both, you know, a lot of times people say, well, it takes a long time to get that stuff through. I mean, we still aren't being paid by insurance companies directly, and that's been 10 or 11 years that they ever changed. But I will tell you this, if it's a priority, it's a priority to us, right? They can make it move. They can handle those things. They can get it done. It has to happen. It has to change.
And this is Nate Philbin again. Just one point, following up on that excellent point, is continue to speak with each other. It's very important for the EMS community to speak with one voice. You know, it's very difficult across the Commonwealth hearing, you know, so many different voices. But if you guys speak with one voice, you can get a lot accomplished. That's my one piece of advice there. Thanks.
And to add to that, there are, like at Cranberry Township in Butler County, they have EMS tax on top of their property tax. You can see it. They fund their entire EMS system. But if you look at Butler County, There's a lot of infrastructure there. There's a lot of money in Butler County. It's different than we are at. And I would say to Brad and Michelle both, if you look at a cell phone fee, and maybe some county doesn't want to do it, make it an option, because that's where this stuff gets tied up. The authority bill, I think I told some of you who I've met, the number one person against the authority bill was PSATs. Think about that. They did not want to do the authority bill because places like Cranberry Township did not want to give up control of public safety, and that's fine. It was an opt-in. You didn't have to do it. It was voluntary. You can choose to do it, or you can choose not to do it. But that pushed PSATs to say, "Dad, we're not really interested in that." PSATs can't speak for northwestern Pennsylvania when they're trying to represent Cranberry and other places in Pennsylvania. And I think Brad finds that out in a lot of different things. So for the cell phone fee, if it's optional, then a county can enact it and they can do it.
So at $500,000 for all the townships, or the ones that would opt into this, what kind of money would that generate for you?
I said it's a little over 250, but I don't know exactly because we don't know the exact percentages of how much I cover different townships. Venango is half, Cussawga is a third, Richmond is half. I mean, they're all have to calculate in as to where the other money, because I would not be the only provider. Cussawga would have Springboro and Edinboro and Meadville, and so that money would be split three ways.
So that's $250,000 and take it.
That's right around where it's at. Oh no, for the whole county, I have no idea what the whole county is.
All right, then you would also charge the insurance companies and individuals for the.
Correct. It's still readiness fee. That's where the transport comes from. Yeah.
I guess I have one question. This is for the whole board. You're asking, for $500,000. Is this going to solve the problem? Is it going to improve the situation?
Well, I'll tell you this, it will sustain the ambulancers that are running calls. I mean, again, as a small business guy, I put reserve aside, I buy capital, just like you guys. My budget's the same. I have a capital expenditures, I buy ambulances. At the end of the day, what I've done is use the capital reserve to cover last year. That's exactly where I've been. So will it solve the EMS problem? No, there's lots of things we need to do with EMS. But what it'll do is it'll sustain the two services, because if one of those two services leaves, it's in bad shape.
It doesn't matter whether you're on the EMS side or on the fire side. We're all looking at the same problem. First off, you can't get any people. Second off, everything costs more. Running on the QRS side, we pay for everything that we use on our QRS side, because the fact is, we can't get it from anybody, or else we forget to ask them, which usually they will give it to us. But it's just, I don't have the budget that you guys have, I understand that. But, it's just, we need to try to put together some sort of not really, you'll never solve the whole problem. We have to start working together. When we start talking about the VOTEX and that on the, do full day classes and stuff for EMTs, won't happen. Venango County class last year canceled 2 classes because they didn't have enough people. It's not, you cannot get the interest. We need to start getting into the schools as an organization or as a group, be fire or EMS, and start trying to get the young people back into our fire stations. I'm in a fire station that 2/3 of my people are over 50 years old.
No, by no means. I will tell you that part of there's EMS issues. For instance, who actually calls an ambulance? That's an issue. Like I've told the township I've met, some people call for toe pain, finger pain, hang nails. They call the ambulance. You can hear the scanner, and that's completely unnecessary. But the law says we have to go. Now, when we go there and we say, you really don't need an ambulance, if they really want to use an ambulance, we have to take them. And so there's a major part of the EMS problem. So
That was just one of the things, that maybe they can do something with the 911 calls, that they can do some kind of screening to prevent this need to have the emergency service.
I will tell you that in Meadville ambulance side, I've told West Mead this. One thing we're trying is a pilot program where we're going to send an individual, an SUV, and alpha vehicles, which are those are the most lowest level of calls, to go out there and try and triage those people to not call the ambulance. I just don't want to send the last ambulance for a minor injury. Now, the problem is no one's going to pay me for that. That's something that we're trying to do to save the paramedic, but no one's going to pay me for that. I'm not going to get paid to have an individual go out and say, hey, you can do this, but I'm not going to get paid for it. That's part of my goal, is to make sure we save the ambulances for the other trips.
It's brought up to me that maybe, the townships could have some classes for residents, the stop the bleed type of CPR. I know that the fire departments do some of that, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think those are all good classes. Stop the bleed, CPR, those are all great classes.
It's 8 o'clock now. Maybe we could have some last minute calls and see how things can work up. Because is Michelle still here or is she leave?
She's still here.
Okay.
We'll give her the last word. Yeah, we'll give her the last word. I want to thank you for inviting me to come today. It's been very enlightening. I have a lot of notes that I'm going to take back to Warren County. This discussion is healthy. It's a healthy discussion. The good news is you're talking about it. The people in Clarion County, those municipal leaders, probably weren't talking about it. They probably would have been able to save that situation. In your future meetings as a Council of Governments, you need to find ways of working together and partnering with your neighbors, not only the volunteer fire departments, but also your paid services as well. Thank you.
And I'll just reiterate what Paul said. Thank you. These talks don't stop tonight, and I know some of them are difficult to have, and there's rocky roads ahead. But as a team, each and every one of you, some things can be accomplished for the good. Thank you.
Echoing everybody else, thank you for having me here tonight. And just to echo Doug's comments, this is really, it has to be a multidisciplinary approach to solve this issue. I would say that most of the people up here do not like the thought of raising taxes. None of us are in that school of thought. However, the tools that we have in the toolbox to solve this issue are very, very slim. And right now it is just that tax, but certainly encouraging you to engage your elected representatives is going to be key in coming up with a long-term solution. Right now we're trying to plug the hole in the levee, but we need a long-term solution that's going to sustain this. Thank you.
I'd just like to thank all the municipalities that came here. Some of us started on rocky roads. I really appreciate that we were able to talk, and this has been great. And I want to tell you that I'm actually your partner. I'm your public safety partner. I provide ambulance service for your township. I'm willing to sit and talk about what we can and cannot do. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to what the state can do. As a county commissioner, on a side note, I agree with Mike. I think property taxes is a terrible way to go when it comes to raising revenue. But at the end of the day, it's the only thing that's literally on the books. And like Dave said, none of us like that. We all have the same mindset. We all have the same backgrounds when it comes to that. And I think what's really most important for all of you to understand is because we've had so many breakfasts, because we bought legislators breakfast so many times, if this meeting, if you all leave here tonight and nothing happens, that paper that Doug's holding up, that'll be my ambulance service in that paper in a couple of years. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And I'm an LLC, and at the end of the day, I've worked here for 20-some years. I've worked really hard to keep it there. But I don't think we want to build it from the ground up. I don't think you want to see that price. I don't think you want to have that much responsibility because it's a lot. So all I'm trying to do is maintain what we've been doing. And I agree with John, but there's some things we can work together on, John. We can get there. I don't want you guys to raise taxes. I live in Westmead. I don't want my taxes raised. But at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we still have this service. We can fix the problems. It will not solve the problems, but it will at least sustain what we have. But we have to start today. We can't wait another year. We can't come back and talk again. I mean, Jill and I put this together in less than a week. She's like, I'm going to do this, and I never lose faith in Jill. She when she says she's going to do it, she does it. And so that's why we're all here. And so I appreciate all your time. And get my cell phone, talk to me. Just all I ask is, Mr. Sim and I both find out, just talk to me. Don't be afraid to have a meeting with me. I haven't been too bad on some of those things. I'd rather have you talk to me now than not have in answers later. So thank you.
So I think I just want to make sure, is the general consensus the cell phone fee the way to do it? Can I see some hands? Cell phone fees? Okay, then I think it was Chuck Lawrence that brought up per capita tax can be hard to keep that list updated. Anybody per capita tax? And then property tax is probably going to be 0 hands. So what I gather from that is our priority in the State House should be allow municipalities to have a cell phone fee, a device fee. If you pay it on if you're paying the $1.65 for the 911 center fee, those same devices you would pay, we think it would be around $3 a month, and that would keep EMS sustainable. You fire and EMS, that seems like a better, there seems to be a lot more support for that than the property tax or the per capita tax. So that's what we'll push for. Michelle, are you Michelle's still in the back. Oh, yeah, who prefers a sales tax method? Couple hands.
And would that be a county responsibility?
Well, there's different ways we could set it up. We could, like, the state law says Allegheny County and Philadelphia County, they have a 1% sales tax. The money's collected, I think the state collects it, but then they give it back to Philly mechanically. I think that's how it works. But that would be an option. You might have some leakage every time you raise the tax. People might go out of state. We're close enough to Ohio. But Michelle, did you want to make any closing statement?
I'm just here. Thanks for everything you do. I was talking to Nate out on the floor, phone outside, and one of the things we were discussing is, again, the regulations. And I know the Ambulance Association pushed several years ago to increase the testing and the response times and so forth. And I think this has exasperated this situation to where we are today as well, because that made it so that a lot of the fire departments couldn't respond, and they had to close and eliminate their response teams and that. So I'm wondering if we also go back and look at if we reduce some of the regulations and mandates and things like that to help this problem so it's not exasperated by the mandates. Thanks.
Okay, I see there's a couple hands going up.
Well, I'm Bill Winters from Woodcock Township.
Yes.
No way am I in favor of raising taxes, but to put this in perspective, if we wait for the state to go through all their nonsense they do, it'd be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years before something gets done. So to put this in perspective, I broke it down. I had my secretary break it down for me. It'll cost me $31.32 a year. Okay, that's $260 something a month. It costs me 8 cents a day. For
property.
Yeah, property.
For the half mil, yeah.
Yeah, for the half mil. So when you come right down to it, if we did this temporary or something, of course you never get temporary tax. But if we did something, if these people are in a bind, what are you going to do? You're going to wait another 5 years or 6 years before they get it through the House, the Senate, and all that?
Well, the whole idea was maybe for the COG to get together, the COGs of the different counties to get together and send letters to the House and to the Senate and see if that would work.
We have Michelle and Brad here.
Plus,
so
right.
They can spearhead this.
Yeah, but they're two people. Yeah, they're two people. Oh,
We'd only be 101 votes away from passing
There you
something.
go.
Yeah, or no, yeah, we need 100 votes away. We need 102 to pass anything in the House. They need 26 to pass anything in the Senate.
Okay, so if you do this tax, it's going to raise money to be able to fund and pay the shortcomings, so that's still not staffing here. There's shortage of volunteers, there's shortage of people to run on the paid services. You just don't have people. Your hospitals can't even keep people, and they're offering bonuses and whatnot. So that needs to be targeted also. How are we going to get people to either become EMTs, paramedics, whatever, for volunteer and paid services? And that needs to be a major focus because you can't staff your ambulances, you can't staff your hospitals, you can't staff anybody anymore. You can't even staff McDonald's.
I think a lot of it comes to pay. Eric could probably talk directly. I mean, if you can pay an EMT more, you're going to get more EMTs, right? I mean, it's just.
Well, obviously everybody knows that there's a post-COVID employment issue. You can just look at it's terrible. You can look at the numbers, and Brenda is correct that McDonald's can't find people, and it's hard to find. No, first of all, volunteers. That's just an age-old thing. And Eric did remind me that the other thing you guys can do is reach out to PSATs and say, hey, why don't you implement the authority bill and make it an option? Again, it may not work in Lancaster County, but in Crawford County, an authority bill would work. It would be a conglomeration of all of you in the room who create an authority. It's a great bill. It'll work. It's another tool in the toolbox. But to answer Brenda's question, I will tell you why and how you can get paramedics back in the system. And this, again, falls on Brad and Michelle. Until you stop having people abuse the ambulance system, the people will continue to leave this profession. I've had paramedics who, when they heard about the Alpha car is the car that's going to take these minor calls and not send an ambulance. I've had medics who worked for me and said, I want to see how that works in 3 months, and if it works good, I'll come back to work for you. Because that's what's killing people in EMS. They don't want to go to the same lady's house 15 times because she needs a hangnail or she has ear pain. It's because there's a safety net missing. There are no more nursing home beds available. They're all at home. People are at home because you can't find a nursing home bed. That's why there's so many lift assists. If you guys listen, your fire departments are doing a tremendous amount of lift assists. They're going to top over 1,000 lift assists in Crawford County this year. 1,000 lift assists. Because nobody can get a nursing home bed. There, like Brenda said, there are no home health aides. They can't find home health aides. So EMS is becoming that problem. But if you want to fix the problem, we need to fix why people call 911. If that paramedic can, when they turn the wheel, they have to think about their job and use the skills they have to do. And I'll close on this. Dave will tell you this. These paramedics can surgically create an airway with a scalpel. Think about that. Surgically create an airway with a scalpel in your neck. And when they walk into Sheets to get their coffee after a 24-hour shift, they look at that little sign that says, now hiring $20.50. And they come back to us and go, well, wait a minute. What? Because that's what the difference is. We just can't raise the price of candy bars and make money back. That's the problem.
I got a question here. If we enact this tax, 0.5%, who do we send the money to?
Well, obviously, what we would do is I have an attorney who is my company attorney who would sign an agreement with you, like we talked about. It would be an agreement with the municipality, and it would include the estimate for the millage. That's a good tax, though. Good question, though.
Let's face reality. Volunteerism is going to continue to decline. The state, in the 80s, I took an EMT class, 80 hours. Now it's over 200. You have the younger generation that's not going to give that time. And that's just for EMT. Paramedics, I know, is a lot longer than that. So you have to face reality. They're going away. It needs to become a county system. There's no doubt. You have to merge some departments together. Linesville Borough could not fund and run the fire department on their own. Even with Pine Township and half of Quantiat Township, there's still not enough money there to do it.
And that's a great point. And I want you guys to know we have two commissions. We have a fire commission, which Eric Costin is on, and he can talk to you about that. And that's some of the stuff that the fire commission is talking about. What's going to happen? We're looking at 10-year snapshots. What happens in 10 years from today? What will your ambulance service or your fire service look like? What's that? Well, apparently. And then on the other side, we have an EMS commission. The EMS commission does the same thing. We're looking at the same idea. And these folks, Dave's on the commission with me, Bill Taylor here from Townville's on the commission, and we're starting to move for those kind of concerns. Oh, Kurt Dennis is on the commission. Sorry, Kurt. But at the end of the day, this is true. We have to find those solutions, and we're trying to do it now because we don't want to wait until the fire departments start closing. Then we're really in trouble. Like, we're really in trouble then. That's really a bad idea. So that's kind of where we're at. We're working on those two commissions.
It's already there. Everybody's starting to spend their reserve money. When they had a savings account, it's starting to decline. So the quicker the county acts and sets up an authority, or whatever you want to call it, and takes over fire and EMS, the quicker the problem's gonna be relieved. You guys need to do something in the state. You keep putting requirements on. Back in the 80s, an EMT could scoop them up, keep them alive till they got to the hospital. I ran a call 2 years ago, did CPR all the way to the hospital with class paramedic. And when we got to the hospital, the doctor said, "Why is that guy here? Why didn't you call in and pronounce him in bill?"
And just so you're aware of the protocol, that doctor's correct. That's exactly what should have happened. We pronounce people in the field who have no viable rhythm. So it's actually, the doctor is 100% correct, because it's a waste of a resource if you're taking someone who's not viable. So it's what the doctor's right. So.
And just to reiterate, in case anybody missed this, the commissioners cannot form an authority. You know, we have to change the state law to do that. I just wanted to make sure people, you know, don't take a shot at the commissioners. They haven't formed an authority. Shoot away.
Mike still wants to know how much the endowment is for Pitt and Penn State, because I find it interesting as well. So.
And another issue is, like, when I'm an EMT, and I was the EMT on call at the whole shot, and it was not just back pain, it was a ATV flying through the air, hit another ATV, and so there was potential for serious damage. But in that case, we transferred from our ambulance to the Meadville ambulance, and they took them in. So only one ambulance went to Meadville. But normally when you have a paramedic come to scene, not only does the Fellows Club go and hauls the patient, the paramedic follows in their squad behind you. So you've got two services out of service because you're one literally following the other one into Meadville.
Well, and again, to cover that, Brenda, at the end of the day, that transportable unit that was on scene should have transported the patient, not Meadville ambulance 26 miles away. It's just not good care. So. Oh, I'm aware. I know. I'm not blaming you. I'm not blaming you. It's just the process. We all good? Thank you all very much. If you don't have my contact information, come get me, but I appreciate all your time. Thank you.